Today's video is a compilation of the absolute best before and after design examples across 2021 on my channel, so follow along and see if you agree with the design changes and what you might do differently. And later in today's video, learn how you can get access to Skillshare Premium. Now, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of different courses across a wide range of creative areas. These are things like logo designing, just graphic design in general, web design, photography, and so much more. So yeah, stay tuned to the very end of today's video to learn more. So here is the first design, and it's trying to raise awareness of plastic pollution in our oceans. It's a great cause, but it's a bad design, unfortunately, and we're soon going to see why. But firstly, what does the design do correctly? I'm going to be frank, the pros for this design are quite few. But for a start, I really like the concept. If you couldn't tell, we actually have an image of plastic or rubbish made to look like sushi rolls. This design is a classic example of an amazing design concept which has been carried out with poor execution. I absolutely love this concept, and soon we're going to build a design around it together. But yeah, I guess we could also say the design is quite minimal with lots of negative space, or shall I say it's kind of minimal. But anyway, let's build a new design from the ground up. We essentially have a blank canvas, and I've kept the original design off to the right as a kind of reference point. Thinking about this design, where would you personally start? Now, I think I want to make a focal point, and a good choice here would be the concept, that being the image of the pollution or rubbish sushi rolls down below. The next step is going to dictate the entire design, and so the choices you make need to be grounded firmly. Looking at the image of that sushi roll pollution, what feelings do you get? Is it a dainty, kind of comforting image? No, it's not. It's a very dirty, a very harsh, and a blunt, impacting kind of image. With that in mind, the typography in the original design simply doesn't match. The original design uses playful, kind of informal, non-impacting fonts, and this is a clear mismatch or disconnect within the message. We want to create typography that is blunt and hard-hitting, so here are my choices, and for now let's just disregard color. I've gone for, yes, you've guessed it, a bold sans serif font for the upper two lines, and then a more rugged looking font for the goes into you section. Now, I've made sure to keep the sizing pretty much equal to the image below, just for visual harmony's sake. The first color I'm going to add is blue, and this can be seen in the middle of those plastic sushi rolls. Connecting color like this throughout the design is a great hack, and more about that later in today's video. The typeface I chose here was Hansief, that's H-A-N-S-I-E-F, and that typeface does come with a normal choice of font, but also, as you can see here, a textured font. I feel like this textured option really adds to that kind of rugged and polluted sense you get from the sushi rolls, and I think it just complements it. You always want to be thinking in this kind of way when designing something. You want to try and grasp the message or the tone of the message, and then make design choices around that notion. So I've then gone ahead and made the now section red so it really stands out from the design. Notice how I haven't used dark grey or black for the other areas of typography. This was done on purpose, and I did try to use a darker choice for the typography, but it kind of overpowered the blue type, and also it tried to compete with the focal point below being that main image. I then finally went ahead and added their logo in the bottom corner, and this is just a minor addition that's not really that important. But yes, side by side, here is the before and after design, and I'm pretty happy with how this message and the concept was delivered in the revision. But let's move on to the next one. So the third design in today's video is a landing page for a VR headset. And right off the bat, you should be considering just that, the VR headset. It's a tech niche, and so you want to base your decisions around that niche sector, and also the kind of people who are in that niche. But what does this design do wrong? Well, it's not a terrible design at all, but there are some things I personally would change. For a start, this buy now section isn't attention grabbing. Considering the main point of this design is to get somebody to buy the product, this design choice is pretty bad. The next point is more subjective, and I don't like how far apart the leading has been set on the main text. The leading is the spacing between each line of text, in case you didn't know. The layout is good enough because it has balance on two sides with the focal point image dividing them down the middle. But I personally want to change things up a tiny bit. So I'm just going to fast forward and show you the changes for this one. Now you can see I've tightened the leading on the main text, and I have really made the buy now option visually attention seeking. Again, my tried and tested method of linking colors has been used, and that's by grabbing that deep vibrant pink and making use of it in different areas of the design. The design now has balance in a different way because I've enlarged the focal point and then I've shifted all text content onto one side. But yeah, again, this is subjective, and for me, it personally looks better this way, and you might or you might not agree when seeing both designs side by side. Lastly, the typeface I chose for the main typography is more futuristic and more modern looking, and I think that appeals to the niche viewer of this design a whole lot more. So I want you to take a look at this poster design and all of the knowledge that you've soaked up and absorbed from my channel or other channels on the internet or just anywhere in terms of educational graphic design content. Think about what is wrong with this poster. When we're making changes to a design, we want to first identify the problems that need to be resolved. And let's be honest, with this design here, there are quite a few problems going on. So the first thing that I identified as a big problem in this design was clutter. There are too many things going on, which makes it too convoluted, too complicated, and too busy. When somebody views a design, especially a sale poster, that viewer needs to access the information as quickly and as easily as possible. And there are so many different ways that this design is cluttered and too busy. For the first step here, I have removed some of the background imagery, as you can see, and also the dots, because I thought they were just insignificant and they were just creating confusion. But there are still a lot of things that I would change about this poster, and I'm going to do that as well, but I want you to think, what would you do and what kind of steps would you take to refine and improve this design? So I've made quite a few changes on this third step and it's still not finished, but as you can see, I've put that fashion sale title actually reading in a horizontal format instead of going vertically, which I think is too convoluted, you know. Also, I've really cleaned up the poster in general and it's really refined down to a simplistic form. I've put most of the key information in the top left and I put the main focal point of the woman in the bottom right. Again, this creates a kind of division and some balance, and also you can think in terms of proximity. Now the information that suggests the 30% discounts, I've put this in a circle so it stands out and is really easily recognizable. But yeah, the main problem in this design, well actually there are two main problems in my opinion. One of them was things were just way too busy and too hectic. And the second was that the information was displayed in a very poor manner. We have dates and we have, you know, websites and text just all over the place, and it's just crazy, and this actually was how it was downloaded. The only thing I had to change was that on FreePic, it didn't come with the female model. It did show a model, but the AI file doesn't come with one, so I added one myself. But there are still a few minor changes I would make to this design, which we're going to check out now. And so finally, here we have the design. On the left is the before and on the right is the after. I have chosen a kind of muted red, which I do think works really well for a kind of sale design. But the kind of bluey green did work, but I do think this is a good choice. Let me know what you think about my design on the right compared to the one on the left. As soon as I saw this design, I knew I had to include it in today's video. Yeah, it's pretty pixelated, I know, but that's simply how I found it on Google. And yeah, there's a lot of things going on in this design that don't work, and I'm sure most of you can work out and see what's wrong here. But yeah, this design is a classic example of the overuse of fonts. It's one of the most basic rules of graphic design where you don't use more than 3 different fonts on a single design. When the viewer tries to read this design, they will stumble, get confused, and they won't be able to kind of obtain the information clearly. Graphic design is all about presenting information to people for whatever reason. It's just a visual language. This design also lacks contrast, a solid focal point aside from the model, who, I might add, kind of blends into the design because she's wearing a white dress. The typography is too tightly packed together, which also adds to the difficulty of reading it. So from a blank canvas, I right away used the H&M logo in its true colour of red, and this is simply to have a strong focal point and an interjection of contrast. The white box behind it is also going to add more contrast, and we will see that as we move on. Next, below that, the main message is displayed in one single font. And notice how the middle line of the 3 lines of text breaks across past that white box. For me, that was important because I didn't want to have this whole section in a neat square box. So below that, the finer print text is again simply laid out with room to breathe, and then the final text displayed in black for contrast below. It's nothing too crazy or fancy, it's just methodical design layouts. And then the price tag for some reason says the dress is sold out, which is pretty odd for a design like this, but maybe that's just how exclusive it is, who knows. So can you see, by doing nothing to the image or the background and just changing very small details on a design, we can make a big difference. So here is our first design, which is a kind of an old school Nike design, a blast from the past, so to speak. In today's video, I'm making the least amount of changes possible just to show how effective they can be. But what would you do to this design, and how would you change it to maybe solve a problem or just to make it more effective as a graphic design? Now you might be thinking, well, the typography needs changing, but how would you change the typography and what style would you go with? You might be thinking that, oh, Tom's just going to slap on a sans serif font. Well, in this instance, you'd be wrong in thinking that, because I've gone ahead and used a slab serif typeface instead of a sans serif. So what is my logic here, and how does this actually work? Well, we can see that the design is more traditional and it's more old school, and so the designer here has used a serif font. Now I've decided to keep things more traditional, more retro, but I've gone with a slab serif as I think it does keep in with the older style, but it's kind of more trendy and more sporty, especially with the italics going on here. If we can notice the lines of the model, we have some movement moving across from left to right, and that's backed up with the Nike logo right here. So that's why I chose italics and not just a static straight up kind of typeface for my design. Also, we have some hierarchy in size and also thickness, which I do think works well and better than this here. Now I want you to focus your attention on the left hand side in the blue area. What do you think might be a problem from a technical design viewpoint when thinking about space? Now you might look at the design and think, well, it's in fact okay, there's not much wrong, and nothing really needs to be worked on. However, there is an issue, and it's based around something called micro white space. Now white space and negative space are different things, and mainly in today's video we are thinking in terms of white space. And micro white space is the space between the small elements like letters, text lines, paragraphs, icons and buttons. So if I make some small adjustments while considering micro white space, you can see how again small changes equate to a big difference. So the micro white space between each line of text and also the visual elements below has been increased to bring a more harmonic and clean design solution. And all of this is while making it easier for the reader to obtain the information. But I couldn't help myself and I had to add in some contrasting colour for this call to action button. But yeah, side by side, it's pretty obvious to see how thinking about micro white space can really improve a design. The first question I have for you is this. Circled here is a call to action button, and basically that's just where a designer wants the end user to click. But on my changes, what 2 main reasons can you give as to why it's better than the first example? So we're looking for 2 main reasons why the second option on the right is more effective than the design on the left, just specifically the call to action button. Okay, so first of all, 2 points to the first answer, and that is obviously the colour. Having it in a bright pinky red makes it stand out compared to it being in black as before, and thus it's more visible and more clickable. So if you guessed that right, give yourself 2 points. But what about the second answer? Now if you notice, the isometric design is very square and very straight edged, and that also the call to action in the original design is also a square shape, then you're on the right track. So on the revised design, the call to action button is a circle, and this makes it stand out geometrically speaking from the rest of the design. And in standing out, we create some contrast, which again makes it more visible and more clickable. So for those 2 correct answers, you can have 4 points in total, or just 2 points if you have 1 correct. Do keep track of your scores as we move through today's video, and see how many you get at the very end. So for the next 2-point answer in today's video, I want you to look at these areas circled in pink. Now I've made some changes to the typography, obviously, but what graphic design principle has been used in the new changes? Now, if you do watch my videos often, then this one should be pretty easy. So for 2 points, the answer is of course hierarchy, because we have some visual hierarchy going on in color and size in this new change design. Though thinking about it, some people might also say contrast or even emphasis was used. And so if you did guess these two instead of hierarchy, give yourself just 1 point. But yeah, I was looking for hierarchy for 2 points. Okay, so the next answer is worth 3 points. So really get your thinking caps on and try and figure this one out. So there is a specific connection with the isometric design, the illustration section, with the call to action button. And it's something that ensures the viewer sees the call to action button. But can you work out what that might be? Looking at the isometric illustration and then the call to action button, what ensures you finally do end up noticing that button? So yeah, this one might be a bit tricky, but the answer I'm looking for is flow. And in this instance, notice how the direction of all the lines in the illustration lead to that button. Those angled 45 degree, whatever degree they are, lines do drag you in that direction. This is a subtle but a very effective method designers use, and it does work well. But yeah, that one was worth 3 points if you got it correct. And that was the last question on this first design. So yeah, the sponsor of today's video is Skillshare, and Skillshare is an online learning community with millions of different users taking thousands of different classes. Now you can actually learn new skills or nurture existing passions, or you might even discover a hidden talent that you might have. Now I'm actually currently taking a course by Gustavo Torres, and I'm brushing up on my skills even though my routine is pretty jam-packed throughout each day. If you want to discover new skills, then go ahead and sign up via the link in the description box below, and the first 1,000 people to use that link will get a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. So yeah, click the link down below and sign up to Skillshare and discover new skills today. If you want to see more content, just click a video on screen. Until next time, design your future today. Peace.